Before we dive in and actually use the Zend framework, it's a good idea to first go over how the framework actually works. And this can be helpful in both assessing if this is a framework you'll be comfortable using and also preparing to actually use it. The first thing to look at is the core directory structure. And you can see here, under your project name, you're going to have a set of subdirectories. The application is going to house most of your files. The library is going to hold the Zend core library. The tests allow you to put unit tests in there that you're going to run against aspects of your code. And the public directory will be what's exposed to the website. This is where you can put things like your style sheets and images and things like that. Finally, you're going to have the bootstrap.php. This is the main index file that's going to be used in all page requests. So this is going to load the controller, among other things. The model aspect of Zend is not strictly enforced. You can use the ZendDB class, which uses what's called the factory design pattern. It's also going to use PHP's data object extension. There is help for security in terms of handling issues like SQL injection. You can also use the Zend table class. This is going to implement the table gateway pattern. Whichever one you use, you're generally going to have to write a lot of code, which is to say you're going to have to write the methods that are going to insert, update, delete, and grab data from your database. If you want to, you can also use Doctrine or some kind of other object relationship mapping tool. The view layer, when we implement it, we're going to use the Zend view class. This implements the factory design pattern. If you want to, you can use Twig or Smarty, but by default, it's going to use just plain PHP templates to render your HTML or whatever type of view you're going to generate. The Zend view helper class can provide a number of other tools to help you format or escape output. The crux of the work you're going to be doing in the Zend framework is in the controller. It's required that you have one controller, but if you want, you can have more. The Zend controller front class is what you're going to extend inside of your Zend controller, and it's really the foundation of all the controllers. The request is going to be encapsulated in this special class called Zend Controller Request HTTP, and you can use that to access form and URL variables. There's a router interface that allows you to dictate what your URLs look like and how you determine what controller to load and what method to call in that controller. There's also a Zend controller dispatcher. The dispatcher allows you to do what's called dispatching, which is really just handling the request. This can also forward to different controllers and things like that. And finally, the action, and this is the core how Zend processes the request. It will have the request data and it will generate a response, which is then going to be handled by the Zend controller response HTTP class. This is really how the flow works inside of the Zend framework. You can see the request object is always peripherally available as you pass through the different aspects of the control. The request is handled by the router, which then has a pre-dispatch, dispatcher, post-dispatch. And all of these are really just a way of saying you have a number of different areas where you can interact with the data that's coming in and determine what's going to be sent back to the browser or whatever it is that's going to be rendering your user interface. So as you can see, Zend has a clear process for the flow of an application. The bootstrap loads the controller handles the request, routing, dispatching, and finally the response. The view is going to be handled by the Zend view, and the simple ZendDB and ZendDB table classes can be used for the model. This is a highly object-oriented approach. It might seem a little complex for first-time users, but ultimately, it provides developers with a lot of flexibility and control.